We don't know her name in the Quran. The Torah, the Hebrew Bible, will tell us that her name is Jochebed. It's pronounced Jochebed. And her name, Jochebed, in Hebrew means tough-hearted. The origin of it in Hebrew means what? Tough-hearted. And the Quran describes this woman and says, لَوْلَا أَرَّبَطْنَا عَلَىٰ قَلْبِهَا, had we not toughened her heart. So the Quran didn't say her name, but the Quran translated her name with no reference to the Hebrew. SubhanAllah. Musa is one of the most interesting to me. I'm obsessed with Musa alayhi salam, if you didn't know. But Musa alayhi salam, his name, some believe, is Hebrew. Some believe his name is what? Hebrew. Because, of course, Taurat, Moshe. It's the Torah, they pronounce him Moshe. They don't call him Musa in Hebrew. The problem with that is that if you think that he's Hebrew, that means that the Hebrews named him. But his name was given to him by his adopted father. And his adopted father was not an Israelite. His adopted father was who? It was the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh is not going to name a prince in the language of the slaves. He's going to name a prince in the language of the rulers. So his name can't be Hebrew, his name has to be ancient Egyptian. You with me? So for a long time, Jewish writers have believed that Musa is Hebrew, Moshe, and Moshe for them is two parts, Mu and Shay. And Mu is water, which is like the Arabic ma, and Shay is like Shay, which means a thing, and they translate his name something in the water. Something in the water, which is a reference to what? The basket and that story. So that's how they translate his name. But actually, more recently, in the 1800s, there were lots of interesting excavations and research done into ancient Egyptian. The Swiss, the Germans, the French, they set up archaeological sites and digs in Egypt and to try to discover the language of the ancient Egyptians. And they actually even developed a way to understand hieroglyphics and the writings, those things. So to try to make phonetic sense of them, to actually figure out what these words mean. And some really interesting findings come out. Musa, closest word to what? Musa actually means newborn or baby. Musa means baby. Now the Quran says that when the basket came, and the queen picked up this child, she took him to the king. And when she took him to the king, the Pharaoh, she said, عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. Maybe he could benefit us, or we could take him as a baby. We could take him as a Musa. And so his name became Musa. And then he came back many years later, and the Pharaoh told him, أَلَمْ نُرَبِّكَ فِينَا وَلِيدًا. Didn't we raise you since a baby? Didn't we raise you as a Musa? Now that's remarkable because the ancient Egyptian language was dead for at least 3,000 years at the time the Quran came. Even if you were going to do the research into the meanings of the word Musa, you couldn't do it. Nobody knew the language of the ancient Egyptians. It was all buried away. And it's only in the 1800s that we start digging some of this up and start discovering some of this stuff, and it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I'll give you one more example. Ismail. The Ismail, what our Mufassirun have done, it's pretty funny. Every time they find any name like Ismail, Israel, Jibril, يعني Abdullah. Israel means slave of Allah. Ismail means slave of Allah. Jibril means, they see an Il and they go what? Slave of Allah, slave of Allah, slave of Allah. Yes, Il actually in Hebrew does mean God. Il is the equivalent of Allah in Hebrew. But it's the Isma part, in the name Ismail. In the Hebrew Bible, you find when when Abraham prays for a child, and finally he has a child, he's so excited. He says, Yashma'il. Yashma'il in Hebrew is the same as Yasma'ullah in Arabic. Allah listens. Like when the baby was born, he was so happy that he said, Yashma'il. God listens. And that became his name, Allah listens. Like every time he sees him, he remembers that Allah answered his prayer. That's what he made his name. That in Arabic became what? Ismail. Ismail actually means Allah listens. Now listen to this ayah. وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلُ. When Allah was raising the foundations of the house, meaning the Kaaba, along with Ismail. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Master, except for me and Ismail, you are the one who listens. Like the name Ismail is mentioned in the same ayah where his name is translated by Allah. SubhanAllah. And so this is done for 60 to 66 names in the Quran. One after the other, one after the other. You'll find remarkably the Quran seamlessly translated these names without even saying that it's translating them. Without even saying it. You know, Dawood, the Hebrews pronounce it Daweed. Daweed, and from which the English pronunciation David comes. Daweed is actually two parts, da and weed, and that means the one of a powerful hand. The one that has a mighty hand. Dhul Aidi, the Quran describes Dawud alayhi salam as one of a mighty hand. Jibreel is Gabriel. You've heard Gabriel before? Gabar'il. Gabar'il is how they pronounce it in Hebrew. And Gabar means might, which is the same as Jabarut in Arabic, or Jabr. It's the mighty one of Allah. The mighty one that belongs to Allah. ذِي قُوَّةٍ عِنْدَ ذِي الْعَرْشِ مَكِينٍ, the Quran says about him. I mean, the Quran became a dictionary of languages that had died. For the names whose meanings nobody would know. Last one, I know, I can't stop with this. I get high on it. But here's one last one. Azar. إِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ Azar. Let me tell you something about Ibrahim alayhi salam. I'll tell you two crazy things about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Crazy stuff. Ibrahim alayhi salam lived, the Bible says, lived in the village of Ur. Ur. Ur was discovered after some of its ancient burial grounds were discovered after the Iraq war because of some of the bombings. They discovered underground that there's actually an ancient city, and biblical archaeologists were able to identify that that's actually the ancient city of Ur. And they found in it thousands of statues, action figure size, life size, like all kinds of sizes. They had many pocket-sized gods. They had so many idols. And the Bible says they worshipped many gods. That's what the Bible says about the people of Abraham. They worshipped many gods. But the Quran doesn't say things about many gods. The Quran says that Ibrahim alayhi salam showed the false nature of their religion by pointing at the sun and the moon and the star. Right? Ash-Shams, Al-Qamar, Al-Kawkab. The sun, the moon, and the star. Guess what happens when they do this dig? They find only 3 statues are a size bigger than humans. Only 3 large statues of 3 figures, 3 people. One of them has rays coming out of him. One of them has a crescent on top. And one of them has a spiral around him. Jupiter. The sun, the moon, and the star, which has not been mentioned in the Bible. The fact that these were the 3 main gods has not been mentioned in the Bible. This was discovered in an archaeological dig, and Quran says he pointed at the sun and said, Hada Rabbi. He pointed at the moon and he pointed at the star. SubhanAllah. What's his father's name in the Quran? Azar. There is no name even close to that in the Bible, or known for the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam. But there's one thing known about him. He was known to carry wood all the time. He was known to carry wood all the time. And the ancient word for carrying wood in the Babylonian language is izr. Traveling into Arabic, it became wizr. And wizr means load or burden. And from it you get Azar, the carrier of burdens. And it's a poetic name because he carried the materials with which he made idols, but it's also, he carried the load of shirk for that society. And so his name became a kind of description. SubhanAllah. Anyway, that was a little bit about non-Arab names. So